Your story matters. The evolution and the unfoldment on your life matters. All our experiences from our adverse childhood experiences, our positive experiences, our PTSD that is from careers, from work, from life, all those things are composed to, if you open yourself to it, to create something new. And there is no better time than the present to be able to take that heroic internal journey, which is the last frontier, seeing all these things and then showing up differently.
I know now that I'll never arrive. We always think we're going to arrive. And I was like, if I become a professor, my whole life is perfect. But I was so empty inside. I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared. I was nervous. I was like, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't have a voice. How do I do this? And that was the call to adventure. And then going through all these things, the different challenges and the obstacles and confronting myself. I lost friendships. I've lost family. We've lost so much, but we've gained so much more because I'm the most clear today at 53 than I've ever been in my whole life. And I say my age just to say that this can happen at 50, 40, 30, 70, 80. It happens to all of us. It's whether we're willing to embrace it. Just being here and talking about it with you makes me emotional because I went through so much just to come to where I'm at right now and to understand that I'm never going to really arrive. So I'm going to enjoy this journey that I'm on.
Dr. Jessie and Omar, I'm so excited to be talking to you because we had such a good conversation. At least I had so much fun when we were in opposite seats when you were interviewing me on your ASQ podcast. I just left lit up and it was way above what I expected. So I'm so happy that you're here. So thank you. And would love for you to share, what do you do and what is your purpose right now?
Good. Omar always does this part so well. I'm going to let him take it. Yeah. You start us off.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Baiba. And also, we had so much fun in our conversation that I'm glad that we're doing like a follow-up, right? Just to be on the opposite end. What do we do right now? So, when we first started podcasting and figuring out what we are at this stage of our lives, right? It was really a journey. So it starts then, right? It starts typically with a dissolution and a call to the adventure, so to speak, in what we call in the heroic terms. So for me, the dissolution started after going through life and finding where I fit in and thinking that was the part that was for me. So after 17 years in the nonprofit world, working with young people, young professionals, there was a time in which values changed and my values changed. And at first, I always found it conflicting, right? Because it's like, this is a part of me. But then what I realized was that it was an evolution of me, right? An evolution of, you've done this, you've been on the other side, but you have so much more to give. I just didn't know how, right? I just didn't know how. And it felt like depression and it felt like anxiety and it felt like all those things. But it was really about asking a lot of questions. So consequently get to what we're doing now. So everything that we do starts with the individual's life. It starts with your life. Your story matters. The evolution and the unfoldment on your life matters, right? And what we call ourselves is leadership from the inside out, right? Because everything starts from within. All our experiences from our ACEs, which are our childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, our positive experiences, our PTSD that is from careers, from work, from life, all those things are composed to, if you open yourself to it, which we did, to create something new. It's painful because you are transforming and you're letting go of a lot of things. But to answer your question, what do we do now, right? What we do now is that we guide people in that transition, right? With the objective of becoming quote unquote leaders, right? What do we mean by leaders? Leaders are individuals that lead from the inside out. They're living from a different place. They're living from a place in which they're using all their faculties to create something new, to help humanity evolve in a positive direction, to help people create, either it will be in business, an idea, a concept, to be able to take all those experiences, everything that makes us human, and to make the world a better place, leave it better than we found it. So, in a practical terms, we work with leaders and organizations to bring what we call coherence into existence. And coherence is nothing more than taking all these fragmented parts of us that are clouded in negative experiences most of the time, and understanding what do they mean, and how can we transform to create something new, and there is no better time than the present to be able to take that heroic internal journey, which is the last frontier, right, of human development, to take that journey and seeing all these things and then showing up differently. So what we do is that we guide people through that. We guide leaders, individuals, organizations, and creating an equilibrium by bringing all those fragmented parts of who you are into one, so that you could function from there. And then we could get more into the details of that as we go forward. So what about you? In a nutshell.
No, you did a great job explaining what we do. I think, for me, I always am thinking about we help individuals with their internal operating systems to get them into alignment, right? Into coherence, which is the word that we use. And Omar just mentioned that. So when our feelings, our emotions, and the way that we behave is all operating from that coherence, what you get into the community, into your relationships, into the way that you speak with other people is also coherent, thus forming or creating this thing called life that is positive, that is filled with positive interactions, that we feel more open, that we feel like we can be truly who we are, right? In the things that we do with our family, with our friends, and with our organizations or our work in our communities. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's funny because I wanted to go back. Omar said that, he had this sort of opening and knew that there was something more, and kind of led to what we're doing today. And for me, this really just happened not too long ago. And so while he's been marinating for the last couple of years, for me, it was a very sudden sort of in your face evolution. It's been a beautiful evolution and transformation for me. And I know we can get into that later, but no, you did a great job. High five on that.
That was such a rich introduction, and you hit on so many points, and I'm like, oh, I want to grab onto that, or I want to grab onto that, and it's all wow, next one is better than the previous one. And I love the sign that you have in front of or behind you. For anybody who's listening and not seeing the video, you have kind of this vortex or a whirlpool spiral that's kind of going from the depth up, in a circular motion.
Yes.
And it so relates to what you were talking about, your own timelines, right? When you were going through, and I think we're all going through, it's not a finished necessarily getting there process. But can you share a little more kind of what was it? Because you help midlife professionals and probably people overall. Sometimes I think we're so focused, also the leadership. I want to invite anybody listening that we're not just talking about this corporate manager or leader. If you are a stay-at-home mom, you're a leader. If you're teaching some sort of classes in your community center, you're a leader. You're a leader because, just like you said, you start leading from within, and sometimes leading yourself can be the hardest thing or the last thing we get to.
Absolutely.
So don't just limit yourself if you're not managing 15 people, in the corporate structure. This conversation still, I think it's such a holistic conversation around leadership. But what was specifically kind of these hero's journey, and I'd love for one of you to set the context of what is a hero's journey for people. They might be going through it and feeling those feelings, but maybe not calling that. And kind of what was it for you in really real world terms?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it was a robust question. So I'm going to take the logo to start with, right?
Yeah.
Because I want to start there, because we are taught that our lives are linear, right? You start here, you go here, then you go there, and then you go finish, right? So we look at life and its time primarily as a linear interpretation of what our life should be.
And that you arrive at something.
And that you're working to arrive at a certain place, right? The spiral really represents the unfoldment of life, right? So you could take that spiral and actually stretch it upwards, right? And every cycle, right? The valleys and the troughs are not always the same as you go up. The lowest aspect of your next evolution is actually the highest of your previous evolution. But since we look at life linear, we only see our lives in terms of achievement of something. The spiral and an upward spiral is evolution because we never arrive at the same place. But that requires introspection. That requires really looking at your life as to not a destination, but an unfoldment and a rediscovering of everything that you are and you could potentially be, right? So the origin of the spiral comes from the heroic journey, right? So the heroic journey, the hero's monomyth, which was outlined by Joseph Campbell in books like The Power of Myth or the Mythos series and things of that nature, is the cyclical aspect of how our lives unfold. You know, we typically have a call to the adventure, right? We have a departure. We meet allies. We meet enemies. We go through a very, very dark place. Some people call it the dark night of the soul. Some people call it the abyss. And then in that dark place, it's really when we come together and knowing all these different aspects of us. There is the dissolution of what it was for the potential of what it could be. As you return to life, and this is kind of like where most people get it incorrect. You have an option as you come back to life, to your regular world, metaphorically speaking. One is that you come back with a different perspective and you share it, right? Or you could become a villain, which is, I learned this, so I'm going to capitalize on this. Forget everybody else. That's an option that we do have, right? So when it comes to leadership, right, because it all ties up together. When it comes to leader, the origin of that word, right, leader, it's actually to guide people, to show a new vision, and then be able to guide. So if you look at that definition, not as a title, again, our society always needs to put stamps on certain things, not as a title, but as a way of being and showing up. So you lead your children, you guide your children, which is one of the hardest things to do because we've been parents and we know that that aspect of leadership is very, very the most challenging one, in my opinion, right? Because you have to have a vision for your children, but it's not truly your vision. It's guiding them so they could find their place. And that's a hard thing for most parents. That's why parents struggle so much, because we want what we think is best for them, not really guided them so they could find everything that they are. It's a different point of view, but you could only understand that if you've gone through it, right? So that's one thing. And then you show up in leadership, not just as, again, a title, because we all know there are people that have the title, but they can't perform to the level of what we're describing as leaders, sharing that vision, guiding people, creating infrastructure in which people are actually succeeding and everything as well. If we had leaders like that, we wouldn't be where we are, right? So understanding that, again, leadership is not a title. It's a perspective that you gain by understanding what you are and choosing to create environments in which people thrive and societies thrive and everybody's thrive. So from the spiral, which is, again, looking at our lives from a completely different perspective, rather than arriving in linear moments, it's understanding that our lives unfold in an upward cycle and that our lowest point, right, was the previous height of a previous level of evolution, right? But unfortunately, we just look at our lives as, well, all this stuff happened, so there's something wrong with me, and it's like, no, these things happen because life happens. Now, what are you learning from it? And what is it that needs to come out of you? And that's what we teach in in nonprofits, in profit businesses. It doesn't matter. It's how you show up, and how you show up by truly leading rather than extracting.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that you touched on, but I just want to make sure is that with the hero's journey, we all go through it, right? We're all on the hero's journey. This is just a name for it, right? And so I invite people to learn more. There's a book actually that we read by Paulo Coelho, and it's called The Alchemist. And that is the perfect book that explains that hero's journey. What happens with a lot of people is that we resist that hero's journey in our life. Like I did that for a long time. I'm 53, and up until just almost a year ago, I did not embrace this, this idea of being on a hero's journey. I wanted to deny that because this was something that was not part of the linear thinking that Omar was just talking about, right? I do this, and then the next thing will happen. Then the next thing happens, and everything's going to work, and then I'm going to arrive. That was my philosophy in life. And I think that happens to a lot of us. And when we resist, at some point, when you resist the hero's journey, at some point, something is going to fracture within you. And you'll either deny it and suffer as a result of that, or you will open yourself up to exploring what is actually happening here. You know what I mean? And that is what Omar was talking about, going in the dark place and having those, 40 days, 40 nights in the desert, and really just facing your demons, if you will, and your experiences, your shadow, all these different things, to then come out on this other side with what Omar was talking about, either giving back, which is what we chose to do, or going in another direction. But in either case, the point that I'm making is that oftentimes people, because you wanted us to explain it, because there are people listening, we often will deny that we're in this place in our life. And to resist that is to resist something that could be such a beautiful experience. Scary, not fun all the time, but a beautiful experience for people.
And what's interesting, right? When you really start thinking about all this, it's a matter of survival, right? Like one of our primary drives is that the drive to survive. We can't deny that. But then there is an opposite side to what we call those engines, right? Because survival has an opposite too, which is living in joy, exploring, and doing all those things, right? Our society, for better or worse, has created a system in which the primary focus is surviving, right? And we use this archaic and wrong definition of what Darwin meant to say, survival of the fittest. He didn't say that. Actually, that was a marketing ploy by somebody else, actually later down the line. The true definition of what Darwin said is survival of the most adaptive, right? And we have survived over and over again by collaboration, right? By leading one another, by collaborating rather than survival of the fittest, and that's a fallacy in understanding. And it's a very good job marketing, actually, because I forgot the name of the gentleman, but you could look it up. And it was a marketing portion that he did to be able to bring this idea. But you see that mentality in the way that we interact with one another. And I'm going to give you just like a brief example of exactly why is it important for us to redefine leadership in a better way, right? These are facts. This is not something that I'm making up. We produce more food consistently than ever before in the world. We produce enough food to feed everyone in the world, right? Fact. The United States throws away more food than anybody else in the world. That's another fact, right? And we have all these resources available, yet our society constantly is living in a mentality of scarcity, right? So when you start looking at our leaders, now reframing the narrative, right? We have lived longer than ever before, right? Although we're going through some stuff right now, the violence that was experienced even 100 years ago no longer takes place now. not to that extent. There are patches of it, but not how we did before. And you from from Eastern Europe, so you know exactly the reality of that. You've lived through that. You've seen that. And we don't live like that anymore. But yet, even with all our advances, we're still living the mentality of survival, scarcity. And that's a shift that needs to happen, right? It's not weakness. It's not all these, oh, let's sit around and swing kumbaya. It's a fact that we are able and we are capable of doing so. But most of the times we choose not to do it, right? A real leader sees this without a title and shows up. And you see it in many different domains nowadays. So we just want to make sure that we highlight that there are people that are not showing up from a place of scarcity, but showing up from an evolved point of view in which, hey, we could do things differently, more efficiently and better, right? But it requires us to really look at those blind sides that most of the time have been given to us. It's not that we've experienced it, but it's not something that came from us. It was imposed, right? Yeah. Case in point, in business, in everything, you listen to all these gurus, right? And they said, I failed my way to success. I made so many mistakes, right? Yet, one of the biggest things that we have is the fear of failure, right? Where do we get it from? School, right? If you don't pass, you're a failure, right? It wasn't really about learning. It's about, if you do this, then you are something. If you don't, then you're not. And then we categorize people based on that. So again, these are just thoughts and things that we could look at differently and see how do we show up as individuals and consequently make an impact on everything else around us, regardless of what title I may or may not possess.
And everything you're saying, and even these fear or failure, I mean, it goes down to a deeper fear of what will others think, how will I get outcast? And it's like, it tracks down to like a fear of survival. And as you were mentioning these things, right, the opposite, that we have enough food, right, but we are constantly being programmed into scarcity, into fear. It's almost like going against gravity, which you're proposing.
Well, it's actually again, we in the West love to take a lot of Eastern philosophies without, and I feel that they're kind of like not understand it properly, right? Because this idea of wu wei, of letting go, right? What does that really mean? It means that we have to let go, not just physically, but psychologically, right? There's a book, and I love this book. It's called Illusions by Richard Bach. Right, it's a small book. It was very popular. Richard Bach was very popular in the 70s with Jonathan Livingston Seagull and all that stuff. And his premise for both of those books was this idea of letting go. So he tells the story of these little creatures that are clinging to the bottom of this river, right? And they're clinging to life, and their life is that of tension because they have to cling, because they're afraid if they let go, they don't know what the current is going to take them. They might just bounce against rocks and then die. So they're so fearful. But this one little creature decided to let go, right? And at first took a couple of bumps and bruises, hitting a couple of rocks. But as he let himself go with the current, he ended up in the ocean where there was bountiful food and all this stuff, right? And when you think about that, what does letting go truly means? It means, literally dying to a lot of stuff that was given, from negative experiences, from, linear life, to looking at life as an arrival, to looking more as an unfoldment, like that spiral, right? That goes up. To look at life more like that rather than, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, But the caveat to that is that it's a reciprocal relationship between the individual and the society that we're in, because the society has to be able to allow that as well and to be okay with that, right? So how does a society change? By individuals showing themselves in a different way. So it's like this give and take in everything that we do. Because if we want something to change, it doesn't mean that we have to change the world. I think that's completely wrong. It's like you have to change your perspective in showing up from that perspective. And that's what we really advocate. It all starts with the individual. The foundation of Western society, for better or worse, it's about the individual, right? Eastern society focuses on the collective confusion and confusion mentality of the totality of the family. The most important thing is the role that you play within the society, right? Both systems got positive and negatives, right? But the beautiful thing about the West, that idea of self-actualizing, right, of looking at ourselves and showing up, is because as individuals, we could transform not just the way that we think, but everything about around us, our families, our communities, our work. And that's important. And we see and we admire those individuals that made that shift, the Jesuses, the Buddhas, the Mohammeds, the Gandhis, the MLKs. We admire those people, right? But yeah, we end up killing them somehow. I don't know why, but that's what happens. We have to show up in that direction, and it's small acts. It's not this "I'm going to change the world" part. It's like, can you live your life? Can you show up to your kids, for your kids, when they really need you, when they're there? Are you able to guide them instead of telling them? Right? Are you able to make sure that when you show up at work, you show up in a way that is productive? Or you're creating some new perspective in the world, which is not for everybody to start a business or anything like that. It's not for everyone, but are you showing up or creating something that's worthwhile to enhance humanity rather than take away from it?
I love everything that you are bringing up, and I want to bring it more even within, because can you really guide, we want to guide our children, right?
Mhm.
We want the best for them, and we think we know. We want to guide others or community.
Mhm.
But two things that came for me is you mentioned also these leaders, right?
Mhm.
Even Jesus or Yeshua, how he was called, in the time that if he lived and walked this earth,
Mhm.
was teaching the kingdom of heaven is
Within.
within.
Mhm.
And Michael Jackson sang about it, the man in the mirror, because
Mhm.
how can you even serve your children or your community if you don't, and it kind of ties into your coherence model.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you?
Ye-
Because we want to kind of this outward model, this
mhm.
external model, which is I think another program outside of this linear program, and they're kind of also intertwined, is like, again, we want to seek on the outside, right? And also to
Mhm.
influence on the outside. But I think it's the truth.
Yep.
Yeah, no, if I'm understanding what you're asking is how is it that we, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm not understanding the question, is how is it that we do this and then guide other people, right? How do
Well,
we,
more it's like bringing it more to yourself, kind of going
Yep.
to that it begins within,
Yeah.
right,
within
right.
you, like even
Yes.
before, like I think that with our culture and all the narratives, we were very pulled into, okay, what again can I do on the
Yes.
outside? What can I
Yes.
Mhm.
create? What can I,
Yes.
externally
Yep.
influence?
Mm-hmm.
But you're teaching also kind of that leadership. We hear it starts within,
Yeah.
but it sounds like kind of like
Yeah. Out there. Yeah. So
Right.
you mentioned some great thing. Jesus begin within. In psychology, Carl Jung talks about understanding all the components of who you are, your persona, your ego, your shadow, animus, right? All these components that are not just physical, they're more psychological, right? And those are aspects of us that are like what, if we don't acknowledge them, a blind spot. But if I'm understanding correctly, what you want is the practicality of that, right? So here's one line from The Art of War, which I think is one of the most powerful things that you could learn, right? Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles, you would always be successful, right? And what does that imply? To know yourself so deeply, right? That you understand your weaknesses, your strengths, right? You understand what are you more inclined to do, right? I'm more in a relationship. Jessie's the more relational person, right? And a lot of people say, well, you don't let her talk and all this stuff, right? But we have an understanding as to what roles do we play. She's excellent in relational. As you could tell in the way that I talk, I'm more philosophical, I'm more of the persona of a hermit, listening and reading and doing that type of stuff, right? And trying to understand. And then she's the one that makes it more practical, right? So we have that understanding between one another. And it consequently could have been that was her and the opposite was me. It's just this is the way that we've have discovered ourselves to be, right? So When you know those things, what are your innate skills, right? There's skills that she has that are just innate within her, right? And that she's explored it, she's discovered it, and then she figured it out, right? And then same thing for me. Those are things that are important, right? And then the more you start understanding that, then what you're doing is that you're positioning yourself to highlight what you really are instead of trying to pretend of all these things that you're not, right? So I'm a person that likes to learn stuff. I like to know why, what does it mean to look within? What does it mean? The most important question that anybody to ask you is, who are you? Know thyself, right? All these philosophical things, it appeals to me, right? Because it's important to know, okay, if I'm in a situation, why would I feel nervous? Well, it may be that I'm an introvert, right? And I having just like superficial conversations is very difficult for me, right? But having an in-depth conversation like this, oh my God, I'm all excited for it. I'm present.
You can't
right?
wait.
I can't wait, right? So what does that tell you about myself? Well, it doesn't mean that I'm going to completely diminish having relationships and having a simple conversation with someone, but my expectation shouldn't be that a person should have to be at my level, right? It will be that when the situations come, okay, I'm going to have those deep conversations, but other than that, I'm going to ask them, how are you? What's going on with you? Tell me about your life. Tell me your story. That's one of my favorite things to say to people, because now I'm in a position to still be myself and allowing that person to be themselves. And it doesn't take away from me. I just know how I operate in groups, right? Same thing in work, right? I like strategy. I like planning things out. And okay, this is what we're going to do for the entire year. So for me, that makes sense. It makes me feel, it gives me comfort, and it gives me like intellectual excitement, right? Some people don't like that. Most people just want to I just want to do stuff, and that's okay. So I have to be able to understand that about me and about other stuff. It was a hard realization to understand that I am not good at those at building, casual relationships, or building relationships that are, normal. Not normal, but just different, right? But Jessie's excellent. She's welcoming. She's to makes everybody likes her and appreciates her. We're just, at different innate capacities. And that's kind of like what I tell people to answer your question about beginning within. Also, looking inside of you, you could start seeing, okay, if I think that I'm better than someone, right? Where does that come from? If you start going down, you can start seeing, oh, it's survival. Well, this person doesn't pose any threat or survival with me. Why should I feel that I'm superior to someone? They're just living their lives. So again, going within is recognizing all these aspects, right? Animate and animus. We have female aspects, what quote unquote female aspects, or more aspects of justice and mercy and love. But we also have the warrior aspects, and every single human has those two aspects, right? So it's understanding how do those things equilibrate in your life, and how do you apply them when situations arise. And these are psychological thresholds, which are much, much harder to measure than physical things. Because you could buy the house, or for all hourly expressions, you could be a success. But deep down, and this has been proven, deep down internally doesn't mean that you are joyful and successful and all that stuff.
And it's really being able to to pause, right? Because when we say begin within, I think a lot of people are kind of put off by that. Well, what do you mean begin within? I don't get it. Because we're so used to having other people dictate how we are supposed to behave and how we are supposed to show up in life, even in our families, right? Sometimes I think that even in our interactions with our families, it can be very disingenuous and very kind of, it's meaningless, right? Or meaningful, but not to that level that you would like to be, because you have molded yourself so that you can belong.
Yeah,
right?
like it can still feel in some way surface level, like we're not
Yes.
deeply connecting.
Right? And I think what happens when you start to ask that question, like, who am I? Because that was the question I had to ask myself. what started to happen is I started to take a deep dive into really going within and spending time with myself, the ugly parts and the good parts, because we all have both, right? And understanding, why is it that I feel like I need to belong, for example? Why am I people pleasing to belong? What's going on here? Why is this happening? And then peeling back the onion layers to figuring out, what is the need that I have that I need to be able to address? And how can I
Mhm.
fill that need without sabotaging myself as an individual and lead from within, from who I truly am? And what happens when you do that is, because we don't sugarcoat anything at ASQ, you're going to lose people in your life. You're going to meet new people. It's like we were talking about the hero's journey. You're going to find your allies. You're going to find your enemies. And the distinction will come to fruition if you allow it to come up for you and surface and bubble up and explore those things and what's
Mhm.
going on in those relationships, and more the relationship with yourself. Because I don't think that we really have relationships with ourselves. We say we do, but I think in some cases, right, you're nodding your head. In some cases, we say it because, yeah, of course I know myself, but do you really?
Yeah.
You really, you know what I mean? And that's a hard thing. And I think it's been a challenge with a lot of the clients that we have and people that we trainings and whatnot. They kind of walk away going, oh, wait, scratching their heads like, what? This is different, because we're challenging people with just going a layer below what you learn in your normal trainings and workshops, right? What you would normally read in a book, a leadership book or whatnot, right? We're just taking you a step below that surface
Mhm.
to explore you as an individual, who you really are as an individual, as a person.
And I mean, again, if you go back to philosophy, right, which a lot of people think it's like this, this ivory tower of certain people that could actually do it, right? It's not something that is the common group people's stuff, right? And again, I always like to go back to people, and it's like, listen, philosophy started on the streets, people just asking questions about what does it mean to be a good life? What does it mean to live a good life? That's what Socrates did in Athens, just walk around asking just a layman, what does it mean to be a good life? What does it mean to be a human being? And those things are important. I mean, in any game, in anything that you do, you have to know what your strengths are, right? You have to know your skill set. You have to know all those things. But there's something about life that is always throwing curveballs at us, right? And we always think that there's something wrong with us.
Mhm.
And I went through that for a lot of my life. And then what I discovered about going inside, by looking at this stuff, it wasn't about me. There were things that I needed to learn, things that I needed to experience. But a lot of it was because I didn't know my skill set and who I was. So my positioning was different. I was putting myself in situations that were against my innate skills, my talents, that how I showed up, right? And it caused a lot of friction because, for instance, if you go into a world and you like planning things and you process that, sometimes that comes to a conflict when somebody wants to be in control and they're your supervisor, right? And you are self-directed, but they want to control. So it's a positioning situation, but you can't know how to position yourself if you really truly don't know what gives you or makes you you. So it's kind of like, again, going back to that fractal relationship between you and your environment. Like, your environment will dictate a lot of stuff if you don't know who you are. But when you know who you are, now you could position yourself within that environment to live at your full full, to just be able to live from that deeper place of life.
So that hero's journey could also be called that place of dissatisfaction, or that transition where you've lived a life, or work, relationships in a certain way, and you get to a point where you're like, okay, either there's an event that catapults you out of it, there's a breakup, there's a layoff, there's something that happens that ejects you from
Mhm,
that, or you just feel that dissatisfaction, there's just
mhm,
that internal drive.
mhm.
And then so that hero's journey is like, it sounds like that's an invitation into that messy middle. And Dr. Jessie, you mentioned that you resisted it for a while. Can you share a little more kind of how it looked like for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You said it perfectly because that's exactly what, in a nutshell, what the hero's journey
That's the
is.
call to
Right?
the adventure.
It's the
Yeah.
call to the
Or
adventure.
the refusal of.
Or the refusal, which was my adventure or my journey. So really quick, when I started, I worked in higher education for many, many, many years. When I walked into this organization, I was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I was excited. And as soon as I started meeting people, I immediately knew that I was an academic at heart. Like I thrived in that environment of like research and pushing myself and doing really well in school and getting A's and doing all these things. I, went through and got all of my degrees, and I had this vision for what I wanted to see my life, right? Again, very linear. I checked all the boxes, went to school, got all the degrees, did all these things, and now I'm going to become a professor. This is what I want to do. I want to teach, I want to give back in this way. And I zoned in on this for a long time. And what happened is that because I was so hyper focused on this one thing that was going to make my whole life complete, I will have arrived if I become a professor. I've done everything right. I'm working, I make money, I have degrees, I'm educated. This is it. This is the last checkbox. And once I get that, I'll be good. I'm going to retire in 30 years, the whole 9 yards, right? But what happened was things started to be blocked for me. I had a lot of blockages, a lot of challenges. I was looked over for certain things. I did interviews and didn't get hired. They hired other people. They hired from outside. A lot of negative experiences with certain leadership administrators in the institution. I would come to them with a proposal. Look, we can do this, and it could work this way. That they didn't want to hear that because now I'm bringing something to them that makes them look bad because they didn't come up with the idea and the concept, right? And what happened was doors just continually kept closing, continually. So this is important because once I realized, okay, I don't belong here. I was going to jump ship, and I really went through a lot of heartbreak because I realized that I will never become a professor. So now I will never teach. And there were punctuated moments where Omar would say, Jessie, he said it this one day, and I'll never forget it because I was sitting on the sofa and I'm crying. I'm like exhausted. I'm not being validated. I'm not being honored. My worth is not, it's just, I don't feel good. And he said, because I told him in this conversation, I'm never going to teach. I'll never be able to teach. If I leave, I'm never going to do this. And he said, have you ever considered that maybe you can teach in ASQ? And I immediately went from zero. I was already at probably a level 100, but I went beyond that to like thousands. And I just said, even you don't support me. Even you don't see my vision. Because I was so hurt because I wanted that so bad for my life. I thought that was the only thing that was going to make my life perfect. So I walked away from that conversation, and it planted a seed. Because I was like, okay, if I was going to teach in ASQ, what would I teach? How would I teach? What's my voice? What am I doing? This is all your concepts. All of your brain is in ASQ, right? Weeks after, we developed ASQ Empowerment Services because I told Omar, I said, if I was going to do this, I need to talk about leadership. That's my passion. And leadership, not in the normal way that people teach leadership frameworks and whatnot. I want to teach it from that leadership from within aspect. And of course, he was on board, and we did this, and still didn't see myself in this thing, in this ASQ thing. So fast forward, I was looking for work because we have to maintain, we have to pay our bills. And I wasn't getting what I wanted from the college, and I was being significantly underpaid for what I was doing. So I jumped ship and I went to another organization, and it was intensely toxic. So toxic. I was having panic attacks. I was anxiety, blood pressure, everything was happening, crying every day, going to work, crying, coming back. What's my purpose? I don't belong anywhere. And now if I leave this, I'm leaving to nothing. And that was that going inward for me, because I was looking at leaving this job and then I would be nothing, rather than leaving this job and creating what we have created to date, which is ASQ Empowerment Services. And I feel Like, it's going to sound really easy to people. I suffered. I went through a lot. I cried a lot. I had to embrace a lot of icky parts about myself and really confront those things and have time with myself and really explore, who am I? That question. And that was hard work. And I'm not done, because I think that as we talk about the spiral, we go through and we have challenges. And now you're looking at those challenges from a different level, because now you've gone up one level, right, in the spiral, and it keeps going and it keeps going. I know now that I'll never arrive, right? I know that now. And that was why we were talking about that linear thing. We always think we're going to arrive. And I was like, if I become a professor, my whole life is perfect. But I was so empty inside that I didn't see what I had to offer the world in general. You know what I mean? And jumping ship and coming to ASQ, it was scary. I'm a full-time entrepreneur. Like, what do I do with? I was like, again, in this case, I was a deer in headlights. I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared. I was nervous. I was like, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't have a voice. How do I do this? And that was the call to adventure. And then going through all these things that I was going through, the different challenges and the obstacles, and confronting myself, spending a lot of time alone, and really, really allowing these things, to bubble to the surface. And then, okay, what is this? What's going on here? I lost friendships. I've lost family. We've lost so much, but we've gained so much more, because I'm the most clear today at 53 than I've ever been in my whole life. And I say my age just to say that this can happen at 50, 40, 30, 70, 80. It happens to all of us. It's whether we're willing to embrace it, because it does not feel good. But the clarity, once you get over that, it's like a roller coaster. You get up the hill, then you come down, your hands are up. You're like, oh, I'm on this crazy ride now, because that's where I'm at, and it truly is a roller coaster. There's crazy, but it's been the most, like I said, the most clarity I've ever had in my life is today. Is how just being here and talking about it with you makes me emotional, because I went through so much just to come to where I'm at right now, and to understand that I'm never going to really arrive. So I'm going to enjoy this journey that I'm on.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. And like 53, first of all, like I would say like 40, maybe. And
Thank
it's
you.
amazing for anybody who's listening. She's glowing and sparkle in her eyes. And I
Oh,
think that it's
thank you.
the divine spark within, right? It's almost like you had the tunnel vision, like
Yes.
of the linear model. And it's like, oh my God, like to me, it's like, also, Omar, you mentioned the feminine and masculine, and we
Mhm.
kind of, what we are taught, is, that it's a man and a woman, but it's all within us. And it's
Mhm.
really kind of that bringing together, kind of that unity within. And also, I see the linear model as a masculine, and that's what we are programmed and trained,
Yes.
up and up, straight, point A to point B, shortest timeline.
Yes.
Numbers
Yeah.
always need to go up. KPIs, motivation always needs
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah,
there. I'm like,
yeah.
what the heck is this? And then it's like we are overriding wisdom. We are
Yes.
overriding anything in
Yes.
nature.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't flow always from point A to
Yeah.
point B. The crops are not always yielding,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and that's also goes back to the spiral, and we are completely like suppress that,
Mhm.
and then we suppress ourselves. We habit this narrative of like being so harsh and judgmental that it's not always going up and up, and
Mhm.
it's just like this cycle, and then it's like more and more constriction.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the funny thing, there's two things that you mentioned, right? Because it's people talk about like the feminine and the masculine, right? And it's really about, for lack of a better term, I will say mercy and severity, right? And the reason being because mercy encompasses softness, the artistic aspect of things, that other realm
That feeds our
that,
soul.
yes, that feeds our souls,
Yes.
right? But it's kind of like, it's kind of like problematic, in my opinion, to call it feminine and masculine, right? Because they are people that have more of that severity aspect, that ultra achievement, that ultra stuff. And I've seen it both in females and males, but I also seen the softness in both females and males, right? So this is really a universal aspect of who we are as individuals, and it's proportionate, right? How much of a proportion is like, if you look at the universe as what Larry said, we're made of star stuff, all atoms and all that stuff. It's like if you mix that together, the composition is going to be slightly different from jar to jar, right? So we're looking at those things because I'm a person that has always been called sensitive, but obviously I'm a man, right? But I'm a very sensitive person. I feel things. Doesn't take away from the biological aspect of me, but there are aspects of me that are much, much softer, much more sensitive. And at first, it was a critique of my personality by a lot of people. But in fact, it's actually something that I embrace, because how can I connect and understand pain and suffering, right, if I'm not sensitive enough, right? If I can't see that in other people. And that's one of the things that, going back to your original question about how do you go within, is to understand that you have predispositions, you have specific ways to look at the world. I'm sensitive. I don't like people going through pain. I don't like people doing unnecessary stuff that is not required and could be done a lot simpler. Like, why reinvent the wheel? That's a sensitive part in which you could tap into, particularly when it comes to men, because here's interesting how it's funny, because that softness, when you understand that, now you could apply to the opposite, right? Which is about setting structures and setting things in which people could actually thrive. So it's understanding these little nuances of who we are, like understanding that the more that I understand the things that I am, now I can begin to see it in others and then be able to tap into it, right? And help them enhance and let them become better. And again, I know what society says about, oh, this is just being soft. It's not. It's not. It's about being, the reality of the fact is that, Armistice is out there right now, right? The Garner of the Moon, right? And they're sending pictures behind. And you hear the astronauts talk about, holy crap, it's just one thing. It's like a spaceship and we're all there, right? It's like looking it out from the outside, the overview effect, what it's called. It gives you a different perspective as to, really, is this the best way for us to cohabitate and live a life that we are just floating in this vastness and we don't know where it is going, where it came from, and all this stuff? Is this the best way for us to do it? Or is there another much better way, much more natural way for us to do it and still accomplish things? Because, that linear path, what it does is it gives you goals, right? And goals are important. But before you have goals, you have to have things that you value. Right? It's like I work with a lot of young people and I say, what do you want? They say, I just want to be rich. Okay. What are you going to do with all that money? So what do you mean? What am I going to do with all that money? It's like, I'm going to now, I don't have to answer to anyone. So you want freedom is what you want. It's like, okay, so then how much money do you need to be free? It's like we have to understand what we value. Do we value security? Absolutely. Do we value freedom? Absolutely. Creativity? Absolutely. So what does that look like to you? Right? Because it won't look the same to me. I was talking to one kid and he was like, well, I want a boat. And I was like, well, I don't want a boat. And I live in Florida. And he's like, why don't you want a boat? That's stupid. That's crazy. He's like, well, you want a boat, but I don't want a boat because, number one, I have to find a place to put it. I got to pay for it. I got to make sure that it works all the time. And I don't really like boating all that much. So if I want a really boat, I could just rent one for $200 for one day. And I don't have the extra responsibility of worrying about it. And he's like, oh, okay. Well, I want one because I want to go out every night. See, that's for you, not for me. So again, it's understanding those things about you, why you want it, what are your values that you really, really want. And then number two is you could set your goals based from those values. But in order for you to set good values, you really have to know who you are. So it kind of like goes into that process. And this is a lot of the work that we do. Find out who you want. Find out who you are. What is it that you really value? Now let's create the systems and the goals that actually could help you get to that point. rather than just saying, I just want to make a lot of money, because that's problematic.
And what we do is, to Omar's point, and also you mentioned it earlier, is to be able to question these things that are happening in your life, right?
Mhm.
Like, why? Why do I have to do this when I could do it? Why do I have to be this rigid micromanager? Maybe I can shift and, do this. And micromanaging can be in any aspect, not just in an organization. It can be in your home. It can be with your children. It can be, that's why we don't say it's leaders that are in organizations. It's everybody, individuals. But being able to question, why am I, a lot of us just do things because we're told to do them, but we don't question why. And does this really bring me joy? Does this make me happy, to do this? And so I just wanted to kind of add to that, because I think we help people to step back from their situation, which it takes perspective to be able to back up, which Omar talked about, the overview effect. When you're able to look at situations, not for being in the details, but being able to step out of it and become the observer of what's happening, your perspectives shift, your appreciation shifts, what you think of this situation shifts automatically. Mm-hmm. But you have to be able to step back. And we often don't do that because we think we need to be in the mix of whatever's going on. Right.
Yep.
So I just wanted to add that because I thought that was important.
And I wanted to ask you, there's so many things and I'm like looking at the time, but I wanted
keep going.
I wanted you to talk about the coherence. What is it for you? And as you teach it in the ASQ Empowerment framework. And I also can't help but notice like the amazing dynamic that you have between you two, and like how did you meet, and like how you just
I'll
work
tell
so
that story
beautifully together.
Yeah.
I'll tell that story. He can talk about the coherence. But the coherence kind of lines up with how we met. So actually we've been together for 25 years this year. And we've been married for 21 years this year. And we met at, working for a local nonprofit. And immediately I was drawn to how intellectual he was. And he kind of introduced me to this philosophical aspect that I had always denied and not really wanted anything to do with. But it was very interesting to me. And so I'm attracted to smart people, not to say people are dumb, but just certain conversations that just kind of get my intellectual brain moving, And so he gave me a good workout with my brain, because he would say all these things and I was just captivated by, he knew this and Joseph Campbell and this philosopher and that and all these different things. And he was introducing me to things that I didn't do. So back to being able to step outside of our comfort zone. This is a guy who was going camping by himself. He was going on vacations by himself. He would go get food by himself. Like, he was doing things by himself all the time. And that was one of the things that I was like, I think that's beautiful. I can't imagine going to a restaurant by myself. That's like weird. Only weird people do that. So the first time that I actually went to because he was like going to the movies by himself, I went to a movie by myself, and I was like, I was really weirded out. This is very early into when we were dating. I'm like, this is so weird. I'm here by myself. People are here with other people. I enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, this is a different experience. And so he really brought me into this world of not being so rigid and robotic about how I function, and really opened my eyes in terms of how I have a relationship with our kids, right? So our kids are not his biological children, but he's been with them since they were little. And the way that he would interact with them was just really like an amazing sort of perspective that I thought I was supposed to be telling them, this is what you're going to do, rather than guiding them so that they can make choices for themselves. And so he really brought me into this world. And little did I know that it would affect me this many years later, all these different things about him. But from early on, we connected, and we were kind of inseparable at that point, and we've been together ever since. He's my best friend. I confide in him everything, the ugly, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But he's really been the person who has saved me from being in the matrix. He's the one that said, the red pill or the blue pill. which is it going to be? And I'm glad that I chose, to embark on this journey, because I can't imagine today. I can't imagine going back to what I was a year ago. I can't, that's a completely different person. And I lived in this relationship all these years, not even knowing that I was going to make this shift or make this transformation or evolution in my life. And so I look at it like, if I had kept going, what would my life be like? And he supported me either way. But now what we've developed in a year's time, what we've developed together, which leads into the coherence, is being able for each of us to understand our operating systems, our internal operating systems, and to be able to have our feelings, our thoughts, and our actions come together and how we interact with each other. So when we talk about everything that we talk about at ASQ comes from lived experience. Yes, I have a PhD. Sure, no problem. But I don't necessarily, yes, it's great. I appreciate it. It's important. I worked hard for it, right? I got my PhD before AI come out, not to throw anybody under the bus. So, but my thing is like everything that we talk about is lived experience. And I think that's why people connect so much with us, is because I can say, you can truly draw on empathy when you're talking with other people, when you can say, I understand how you feel. I've been there too. Let me help. Let me guide you. Let me walk with you through this. You know what I mean? Rather than saying, well, there's this framework that we learned. It's called, emotional and social intelligence. And this is how this operates. That's diagnostic. That's putting a Band-Aid on what's actually happening, rather than going with them underneath with that lived experience portion. So our relationship really, is birthed from that living from within, even though I didn't know it. And now being able to put words into what's happening, not to get technical, because there is, we have fun, we do fun things. We're not just,
robotic. Yeah.
but we really are very firm about, like, when we talk with each other, we also interact with each other from that space of being coherent. Like, I'm going to express how I feel. This is, using I statements, doing all those things. Mm-hmm. And it has brought us so much more closer, even over the last year. Like, it's incredible, like the stuff that has happened in our world. And we've had challenges. Like I said, we've lost people in our life that have just decided, and that's okay. But we've also gained a lot of people. We're meeting amazing people on podcasts like yourself. And it's just been a really beautiful experience. But I always say that if it wasn't for us being able to understand what coherence really means and understanding ourselves internally so that we can act outwardly the same way, we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah. And I appreciate everything that you says, but it's a dual street, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I was so hesitant about love, so to speak, when I was younger, and allowing myself to feel open with someone. And that was a big challenge for me. It took me 4 years, to acknowledge that reality, that I'm just afraid of committing, and making a decision like that.
There's a funny story to that. Actually.
Yeah, there's a funny story for
the first 4 years of our dating,
our dating life.
It's funny because we were living in Miami, mm-hmm. and at one point we were driving on the 826, and I said something about, because we never say I love you. Like, me and Omar don't. We say it, but we say it when we want to say it, when we mean it. Like, not to throw anybody under the bus, but the whole, I'm on the phone, I love you. Okay, I love you too. Okay, bye-bye. I mean, what is that? I mean, okay, there's meaning, but there's like, I say it in those moments when I feel it. I'm like, Omar, I love you. This is a great experience. I'm having fun, whatever. But on this drive, because I had already started feeling love for Omar, within the first year or so. And we were a little over a year together at this point, and he'd never said, I love you. So we were talking, And I said in the car, I said, you don't ever say you love me. Like, do you love me? And he could not say it. Like, he could not get the words to come off of his tongue. And I'm like, so I pulled over off on the 826. I'm like, I'm not going to do this with you if you can't even tell me you love me. It was a funny experience. Anyway, he finally said it. And I just know that was so like this moment of vulnerability for him, because he had so much trouble saying it. After a couple of years, I was like, listen, I kind of want to get married. I don't want to be going, I'm going to be 30 something years old. I don't want to be in my mid 30s and we're not married. Like that's not what that society frowns upon that, right? That's what I was thinking. I'm doing, for those that are listening, the air quotes, I had an expectation. This is how it's supposed to go. We're supposed to get married. And he was like, I don't understand why we have to get married. It's just a piece of paper. I love you. You love me. And I'm like, well, don't call me your wife anymore. We're just boyfriend and girlfriend. It was just this ugly place. He was so resistant. So a whole month went by and I was like contemplating, I don't know if I'm going to stay in this relationship. We've been together 4 years. It's time. I want to get married. And he did not want to. And so one day he wakes up and we're sleeping and he kind of taps me and he says, hey, let's go get rings today. And I was putting on my clothes before I got out of the bed so we could go. I don't think I was like, oh, I got to brush my teeth. I wanted to leave before he changed his mind, because this guy was so resistant to like that. He was committed, but it's almost like having that final,
And again, I'm fortunate that I was able to go through this journey with somebody else that was understanding. There's never been cheating in our relationship. There's never been any disloyalty or anything like that. It's been more, again, I'm a very introspective person. So it's this idea of commitment, this idea of giving your life to somebody else and really taking it serious. It was really challenging. It was really, really challenging. And I had to go deep down inside and say, what am I afraid of? What is the fear? What are all these different things? What is it that you're looking for? What, and so all those things throughout our lives and many different stages, those deep questions came up, and I had to dive into it and look at myself and say, okay, what is it that I'm seeing here? What is my afraid of commitment? So, and it goes back to your question of knowing yourself. Why is it that the fear is there? I mean, I saw a lot of dysfunctioning marriages growing up. I saw a lot of infidelities on both sides, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. And naturally, right, it's much easier for me to be alone. It was, so some people find that weird. To me, is this, I enjoy that. But then now living with somebody else, and even with this starting something together, which is very challenging, it's bad enough that you are sometimes having partners in businesses is problematic. Having a life partner in business could be very challenging, and that requires true honesty and true acknowledgement of fear, and be okay with that, and then being open enough to say it's okay, allowing the other person to go through their frustrations and all that. So when we talk about, the entire heroic journey in the different cycles of it, there's one in which I had to do it at an early age. I had to go through my own cycle myself to find out all these different things about me, confront childhood experiences that were negative, confront all that stuff. But then having it to do it with someone, it's been the greatest decision I've ever made, because it's been beautiful in that way. And we're very fortunate that we have each other in a world that doesn't value that as much anymore. That combination of bringing two different opposing forces together and then being able to find that equilibrium on the regular basis. I tell people all the time, it requires effort. And you have to be willing to take that effort and put the effort into it if you want something that is worthwhile. So
I will have to say, though, just to go back to the disloyalties, he's slightly disloyal to me. He cheats on me all the time with our cat. Just going to put that out there.
The cat gets more attention.
Sometimes.
That's her fault. She's the one that got him. So
I'm kidding. I just thought it was cute because he was saying that. And I'm like, yeah, but you are all the time cheating on me with Lila. Okay.
Well, you should have gotten her.
That's funny. I have a friend, and I hear it like every once in a while, like where um, women will say, "Well, he's with the dog more than with me. He goes walking and takes the dog." I guess in this case, the cat. But
It's
there's
the
that.
cat. And I'm kidding. He treats her. She's our old lady. She's like 21. I got to give her as much attention as possible right now. So anyway.
Well, if you don't have a third branch yet, then I think you should do ASQ relationships.
You you are not the first person who has said that, because people are very, very intrigued when we come on camera, which is kind of interesting to me. And you're like probably the third or fourth person that said it. They're like, how are you doing? And you guys get along? What's happening here? And we're not lying. We really do we have our moments. There's moments, but I will say that our, acknowledging this inner world of ours, it did take a lot of inner work on both of our parts, and acknowledgments, and being vulnerable and open to being exposed to each other, to have this relationship that we have today, especially with, we're business partners and life partners too. It's a dance. It's a delicate dance, but it's become a lot easier as we've gone forward, because we're able to step back and say, okay, maybe I don't have to know everything here. Like Omar was saying about me being the relationship person. I think at first he was just like, oh, people really like you, but they don't like me the same. And I'm like, well, they do. It's different. You know what I mean? And being able to be vulnerable to that and accept those things about ourselves. He's an amazing, phenomenal speaker. I'm not a phenomenal speaker. Can I do it? But I don't really want to, I love being the relationship person in our business. And so we've just kind of made our lanes, and we do that in our relationship as well. Like, he's responsible for figuring out what we're going to eat on the weekends. What are we cooking? What are we doing? And during the week, I take care of the cooking. When we're going on trips, he builds the whole trip. If it's not broke, he said it earlier, right? To his point, I'm not going to fix it. He's great at fixing our itinerary, what we're going to do. He gets us where we got to go, GPS, etc. It works. So but you're like the fourth person that has said we should do something about relationships.
And you know what? In relationships, it's like, somebody else being diminished. And so that, so we always have conversations about that. It's like, do you feel diminished? Do you feel like you want? Because again, these are conversations that are hard to have, but they're important conversations to have. They're the most important conversations, because I want her to be herself, and I want her to thrive as an individual in doing the things that she would like to do, and then consequently, I would like the same. And how do we have those, right? It goes down first, because people will say, you just have to communicate. I mean, that's only half that's just a superficial level. It's like you really have to go down within yourself and say, okay, what is it about the situation that is giving me uncomfortability? I'll give you an example perfectly, right? We have a team that does a lot of stuff, and Jessie does her lane. The team does their stuff. We set it up. I vetted it. And I say, okay, this is what everybody's role is going to be. And they're doing it. She's doing her part. I'm doing my part, but at a much lesser level, because I'm working on other things. But I feel guilty that everybody's doing stuff and I'm not involved. And she tells me, but what else are you going to do? You have already set up everyone in what they need to do. But it's like little things like that show how that severe part of you, the controlling aspect, could completely go one way, versus saying to yourself, well, they understand what needs to happen. They know their objective. They know the reasoning. They have everything there, right? Why am I stressing on it if they already know and they have proven that they could do it? Why am I stressing about it? Why am I feeling like I need to be more in control, right? So again, going back to knowing yourself and how does that apply to leadership, it's recognizing that, okay, I have a trust issue. Why does Omar have a trust issue in this situation when everybody is gung-ho and they're doing what they're why? Why is that? It's like, oh, because I feel if it's not up to if it's to be, it's up to me. But that's a completely wrong way of looking at it, because now, like she mentioned to me this morning when we had our meeting, oh, look at that. Now you have time to focus on this and this and this, right? But again, a response, which is typical response from that sense of power and assertion, right, goes right away like I need to be more involved. Versus, why am I feeling this way? Well, you don't always have to be involved. There's other things that you could do. You already set it up. Like, why you stressing and being obsessive about it and making sure that everybody's doing everything the way you want it to do? That becomes problematic. So going back to your original question, that is the practical way to start looking within, right? Because now you're fighting the emotion. I mean, not fighting the emotion, but you're looking at the emotion that you feel, I'm losing control. And when you dive deeper into it, it's what he's saying is you feel like you have no power, that is everything in somebody else's hand. But it's not. You're the architect of it. They're playing the roles that they want to play. You have to learn to step back and say, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Let me appreciate that. See,
Yeah.
and again, this is our morning conversation today.
Literally this morning.
about that. So again, we're not talking just theory. This is something that is practical. And this happens to a lot of like leaders and managers, right? They feel the same way that I do, right? That I did this morning, because they're the ones that are responsible, right? If things don't get done properly. So then what you do, you start putting all these things on you, and then you're not guiding other people, right? So they are able to do it in the absence of you, right? Because if your objective is, again, going back to the values, if your value is to belong and be recognized, this is how you're going to operate from this friction. But if your value is to be able to say, I'm a leader that empowers others to grow, right? And consequently, if they do their job, the outcomes will come. That requires a big level of letting go. And can our ego handle that, right? And those are the things about the practicality. And this is how all this stuff comes together, right? This is how your drives, this is what we talk about, your drives, which are natural, impulsive drive, power, belonging, you know, safety, all our psychological, physiological needs, right? Those are primal stuff. That's just natural, mammalian brain stuff, right? And then our emotions, all that they are, is telling us which one of these drives is out of whack, right? So if for me this morning was power, right? Power, like I need to have, I need to make sure that everybody is doing it my way, right?
Control.
When you're control,
Control,
precisely.
yes.
Now you're realizing, wait a minute, I show them how, they're showing me that they're doing it. It's being done, right? Now I have to be able to say, okay, now can I use my power, which the other aspect of power is creativity. Now can I use that flexibility in time to create something else, right? Which is the next stage of the building, right? And letting that go.
And it's
And
something
then
that you actually want to do. And it's
precisely.
almost like we don't trust doing something that actually comes naturally, that our soul wants to do, right?
Yes.
That you're so trained to go back to the forcing, to the survival,
Yeah.
to everything that is on the to-do list versus what, expands our heart and soul.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And those are conversations that we have on a regular basis, because again, it's like, and this is why we tell it, this is not for everyone. I'll be honest to tell you that. It's just not. Like following the hero's journey requires a lot of introspection. It's the story of our lives, really. If you look at the hero's monomyth, this is what every person goes through, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. The question is, are you going to go through it without feeling the tension, or you're going to go through it aware of, oh, this is what's happening in my life. This is what this emotion is telling me. It's not that I have to attach myself to the emotion. Is that, oh man, you don't have to be controlling in this situation, Omar. You could let it go. The team is great. You vetted them. You showed them. The outline is set. The targets are set. Why are you worried about this? You don't have to have this level of control. So I'm like the little creature in that river that I need to let go and see where the ocean will take me, right? But those, again, stories, people's lives, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all those things are metaphorical things that ought to be happening in us, right? That introspection, that looking into ourselves, because then you could see precisely what you are here to see and be able to build and create. Because ultimately we are co-creators in life, right? And that's why we're set to be. So in order to do that, there's no other place. No other place. I looked. You could take my word for it or not. You could take the world of Young, Jesus, and everybody else. The only place to start is within. There's no other place.
And I bet the ASQ Empowerment Framework these are exactly the same steps to co-create like the most beautiful relationship. And it's like, if anybody wants, right, a fulfilling relationship, what you're describing, you're seeing yourself, and then Jessie is able to see you, right, and reflect, and also in these moments, right, to bring you back. And I'm sure you were talking about the same, that Omar and his way of being and perspectives have influenced and led you, right? And I mean, to get to that beautiful relationship, takes two people being in coherence, what I also call in unity. I think that is the unity within.
Mm-hmm.
And only then you can have a truly fulfilling and the most beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, just to make sure that people are aware, it's not easy. It's like Omar said, there's effort and there is misunderstanding, but we've come to a place where we understand that, wait, what's going on here? What is it that I'm missing? What am I, being able to step back?
Mm-hmm.
It's become more like an automatic response. When he said what he said to me this morning, I didn't just jump all over him and go, well, I don't understand, blah, 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 yeah, and do all that. I just said to him, I said, well, okay, let's look at this for what it really is. Boom, boom, and laid it all out. I'm not going to repeat what he just said, but it's being able to do that it's become more natural now as a result of this understanding of ourselves. And so now it's a much more synchronistic or unified relationship as a result, a coherent relationship as a result of that, because we're more understanding that, wait, this is maybe something on me and not something on Jessie and the team. Maybe this is something within me, what's going on here. And then me being able to project back, well, now you get to focus on this, and these are things that need to be done. You need to do them. We can't do them. We'll run the engine while you work on this other stuff, So it has been a long, we've always gotten along together, but we've never gotten along as well as we have gotten along the last year for sure. Because it's a different
the spiral behind you, like
Yes.
what you're talking about. Also, like what used to be the highest becomes the lowest, and
Yes.
it's like this. Also, kind of the asterisk rate that added. It also kind of brings us back to this linear model where we want to apply that something is a constant and never changing, and like it's a dance, just like your purpose, just like your life, your health, your body alignment. It's not constant. Like, I mean, research, I think, is so limited. Like now there's coming out that 99% of the universe is plasma. And it's very, even the body alignment, you can have a perfect structural alignment and still feel bad, and vice versa. So we want to force this linear static model on everything, including relationships. But it is that beautiful spiral, and you can spiral and dance more upward than downward, but that doesn't mean that it's always the same experience, in every moment.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
It's funny because Alan Watts has this video series, right? And he puts a squiggly line and then he puts a grid on top of it, right? And that's what we do, because in order for us to, and again, it's we look at it, it's a good or it's a bad, right? In order for us to understand the world, the simplest way to do so is to measure, right? So we measure things, we create probabilities, we categorize people, because it's easier for us to do that in order to understand the world. But what happens with that, right? And this is why I say it's kind of like an oxymoron to say I believe in science, so to speak, because wait a minute, science is a process, it's not a belief system. It's a process of discovering, right? But the problem with that mind frame is that you miss life when you start putting grids on it, right? When you start measuring every single movement, every single thing, it's like you miss the beauty of a bird singing. You miss the beauty of the little things in life, because we are so we so consumed with measurements and the linear mentality that we don't see those little aspects of it. And that's one of the things that we have to do. You asked us earlier, how do we define coherence, right? And coherence for us is because again, everything starts from the inside out. And I mentioned it a little bit, but I just want to touch on it one more time. It's about understanding these aspects of yourself. And originally, when we started doing it, we took this from the soul. And when you look at the word, right, because again, it's a concept that came from a certain time and place. But when you look at a concept and then you as it evolves, things evolve too, right? So the soul has been an evolution in thought, because if you look at, for instance, from a Kabbalistic standpoint, esoteric teaching, they have 4 aspects of the soul, right? Which is just the mineral, the mineral, the plant, the animal, and then the human minds, right? So those are 4 components of how they define the soul. But then you go into Plato, and Plato defines the soul as our appetites, our emotions, our faculty of thinking as well, right? So when you start looking at different versions of this definition, you start finding a pattern, right? And the pattern is there are aspects of us that in the West, we have always, what we focus on primarily is the faculty of thinking, the cognitive function. That is primarily the one aspect that makes us a person. And that's a half truth, right? It's not a whole truth. It's a very important aspect, but if logic was the only thing, right, that we use, then we wouldn't be where we are as a human species, right, with all these conflicts and things of that nature. So what else drives us? Well, the first thing is appetites. And appetites are nothing more than those natural core drives: safety, like I mentioned before, joy, exploration. Those are another aspects. Power and creativity, the one and the same, just different aspects of it, right? A sense of belonging and relationships. We know that we are relational beings, and we need to have that. But then something else is the drive for transcendence, meaning we want to be more. We feel like there's more to us. This is why there's this thing about what is in space, what's out there. We have all those drives inside of us, but we don't talk about that, because those are animal things. The sex drive, which is the power drive, those are animal things. Animals do that. We don't do that. We are superior to that, right? But when we understand those drives, again, they're not negative. They're just either too merciful or too severe. And the job is to find the balance between those two engines, those two opposites, power and creativity. How does that get balanced out in a life, right? So then you go into your faculty of your emotions. So your emotions are nothing more than a signal, right? There's something wrong with those engines, right? Give you an example: anger. What is anger? Anger is the absence of faculty, right? Because when you're angry is because there's something that you want to do, but you can't do it. So it's like telling a little kid wants to say something, a small child, and you say, no, but, what happens to the little kid? Why? Because his agency to express himself was suppressed. And this is what happens to a lot of us. We want to do something else. We want to be free, but we can't, because we got bills, we got this, we got that. So everything that you see right now is this tightening in our society, because the agency that we want, freedom and the life, we can't express it because we're too busy doing all this other stuff just to survive. Right. So when you start looking at those emotions and seeing that, because now that you use your faculty of thinking, you could say, wait a minute, in this relationship between what's happening outside and what's happening here, I am angry because my money doesn't stretch as much. I got to pay $5 for gas now when I was paying $2.49. How am I supposed to get by? How is this way that we're living? I have to work 60 hours a week in order just to maintain a life. I had this conversation with this one father, and he's like, I'm so tired at the end of the day that I can even spend time with my kids and be there, because I go home, I'm so exhausted, I eat, I want to take a shower, and I'm just so tired that I can't even have a conversation. Right. So that has a ripple effect on everything else, that child's life, how she shows up in school. And so you see the consequence, but only when we see our desires, our emotions, and then we use our mind to be able to understand, is this relationship just me, or is it something about the environment as well? Now you could start making high level functioning choices to move in a different direction. It might cost to course correct. It has cost us financially, but we wouldn't have it any other way because this is our life. And at the end of it all, we're not taking anything with us, just the experiences and what we do here. So it's really like looking at life from those point of view. So that's what coherence. So when you start operating from there, and you're slow down a little bit more, so you could see things in a clearer way. It takes practice, because you're not going to undo 40 years, 30 years of social conditioning in a matter of one session. I don't think that's realistic.
No.
But the idea is to be able to put yourself into situations daily, to see the perspective, learn from the experiences, and create a new approach. And that's kind of like what coherence means to us in a nutshell. I wanted to go back to that and just give you like that definition with some examples so that people could understand what this is. And from there, you could create a business if you like, a better relationship if you like, whatever it is. We know what we want, and this is what we want. And I tell people all the time, I don't know what you want, and I'm not going to tell you, even if I could. Why? That's your life, not mine. I shouldn't be telling you anything. I'll guide you. We'll guide you. We'll provide the support, but it has to be something that is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And you can actually uncover what it is that you want versus what you see on Instagram and what everybody else has programmed you to want, as much as we sometimes might adopt it as our own wants.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you go down that journey, you can connect with what you truly actually desire
Yes.
at a deeper level. I can talk to you forever. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow ASQ Podcast. Check it out. And also, I'll include the links in the show notes. What would you like to add, Dr. Jessie and Omar? How can people follow you and connect with you?
So everybody can go to asqempowerment.com and they can see about everything that we're doing. There's resources on there. We have articles that we publish. We're also on LinkedIn. We're on all social media outlets. I was going to go through all of them. We're on all social media outlets. You can go to YouTube to listen to our podcast. We have amazing people, including yourself, that will be on there soon, that we've had conversations with. What else? What am I missing?
No, I mean, the only ASQempowerment.com.
I said that.
You could visit us there. My only thing with people is to let them know there's never a better time than now to start your quest within, right? To start discovering these aspects of you. That's what I will say. It's there's no better time than now to start asking. Age is nothing, referencing Aaliyah, age is nothing but a number. But it's always a good time to start, if something hits you, to actually begin to investigate it without pressure, with love and kindness for yourself as you go through that.
Yeah, and that's really our role, is to be able to guide people through that exploration. And so people can get in touch with us through our website. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We're everywhere.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for leaving everyone with that invitation, because especially because of the age narrative, or when you've done something for years, decade, two
Mm,
decades, or
mm.
however many years, it might feel like it's too late, right?
Yeah.
Like you're too old.
It does feel that way. I think it's a scary thing too, that whole midlife transition thing. It's a real thing. People, do crazy things. They go buy a Corvette or they do, blow all their money. We don't recommend that. So we're here to guide people through that whole transition, but it is as scary as it sounds. It has really been, like I said, just to punctuate what I said earlier, it really has been the most beautiful thing that has happened in my life for me. So, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your journey.
Thank you
Oh,
for having us.
absolutely.
This is amazing. We love being with you. We love your energy.